So this is class 6, our last class. And to start, we were just going to go over our different study journeys and recommendations for like a larger study plan. And we were thinking Akarshna could go first so that she can like relax after this.
Um, so my plan for studying was a little bit more chaotic because I was one of those people who didn't really have to study for logic games. It was more of a practice, practice, practice kind of thing. What I did do in the beginning was focus on different types of games. So I never really learned the way that you guys did, like what kinds of games they are, but I did like go through a power score book that grouped them in a certain way that it built up skill after skill. So I did focus on like sequencing and then like grouping and then in and out, things like that. After that, I started taking sections timed. And once I found a method that worked for me, I just kept doing it timed over and over again. So if I did a section, what I would do is the next day or a few hours later, I would come back to it and do it over again and try to do it faster. So if it took me 35 minutes to finish a section and get them all correct, then my goal was to do it again and then get it all correct in under 30 minutes. So that's how I started getting faster. I focused primarily when I was building up skills on the first 20 prep tests because they have really intense games. They really are much more like actual logic games than they are what they are now because the games that we have now aren't really logic games. But from PT like 1 through 20, it was actual logic games. So I spent, I think, a few weeks just doing those games over and over and over again, and I mastered them. And by mastering them, by the time I looked at the more recent games, it became really easy for me to look at a sequencing game and think, this is really simple because I've just solved that absolute like mess over there and I've mastered them. So looking at a sequencing game or an in and out game became a lot more simple for me because I was doing harder games over and over again. Um, so I focused on the harder games, and then after that, I went section by section, and then every time I did a section, I did it over again. And if I didn't do them well, like if I got things wrong, I would do them at least 3 times again. So it was a matter of doing the games and then doing them over and over and over again, which seems counterintuitive because it seems like you already remember the answers. But if you give yourself enough time in between, you won't remember them. And it's a matter of, okay, well, I know this is how I did it the first time. How do I get better at it this time? And how do I get the answers right this time? Or how do I go quicker this time? So if anyone tells you that doing the games over and over again probably isn't helpful, they're wrong because it is helpful. It may not be helpful for them, but it is helpful for most people. Um, Yeah. The other thing I did was, I had a list, like a set list of games that I did before every like LSAT, as in like approaching the LSAT, and I can put that in the chat which sections I did. But I did section 57, 62, 63, 77, 79, 80, 88, and 89 over and over and over again. Because those are more recent games and they do have some difficult games, and doing those sections all together, like as a whole section, not just the games themselves, is really helpful because you have to start strategizing. What do I do when I see a game that I think is difficult? And for some people, that maybe I'm going to skip this and come back to it. For me, I can't move on. I need to do it then. But it's a matter of, okay, well, if I think that I might encounter a hard section, that means my first 2 games have to be done really quickly and they have to be done well to cushion for the possible chance that I'm not going to do as well on that third or fourth game. Because when you have a hard game, it's typically going to be the third or fourth game. So when you do these sections over and over again, you start to strategize. And that's the point of logic games. You're never gonna like look at these and be like, I know exactly what I'm going to do every single time. Like I don't know, maybe you are going to be like that, because you never know if they're going to throw you a curveball. I did something I shouldn't, and I scrolled through our LSAT today, and it seems like they've been throwing people curveballs. So you need to prepare yourself for what happens when there's a curveball. You never know what's going to happen. So the point of me doing these sections over and over again was to get myself so confident on the things that I know I can do that when I see a curveball, I have banked up like 15 to 20 minutes to work on that one game. That's the point, to get so good that you can cushion, you can do so well in 3 games that maybe that fourth game doesn't matter to you so much depending on what you're aiming for. Like if you're aiming for a 160 or something, you don't need to get every single game right. You don't. So if games is not your strong section, then you don't need to worry about that last. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you want to cushion yourself so well that like you can bank on the most points possible. And if that means like you need to strategize to understand what you need to give yourself the most time on, then strategize to do that and focus on strategy while you're studying. Does that make sense? The other thing I did was when I encountered a really like difficult game section for me. I didn't do time tests often because they're not good for you to do time tests so often. So if I started doing a game section and I realized that it's difficult for me and I realized that I wasn't going to finish it in time and get everything right, I stopped worrying about the time. I cared more about getting the answers right than I cared about getting them right under 35 minutes because I knew I could always go back and figure out a better way. But I wanted to see if I could get them right the first way. It didn't matter to me the time. So if that's the case, if you sit down and you decide, I'm going to take a time section today, you start a time section, you're like, this is too hard for me. I'm not going to get this all right in 35 minutes. Totally fine. Don't bother. I don't know if Gennady and Shrey are going to disagree or agree, but they have their own plans. Um, Again, mine was more chaotic. I never really had a set plan for anything. My plan was very malleable. I would wake up every day and I'd be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do today. And then halfway through the day, I'd realize this is actually not what I need to focus on today. And I'd literally change it middle of studying. So um, if you're a kind of studier who's okay with being that malleable, then hit me up for more details on my study plan. I can talk to you about it like more one-on-one. But if you need more structure, like my plan will not work for you because I'm very chaotic. Like I have no problem switching up in the middle of what I'm doing. But if you can't do that, don't listen to what I'm saying then because it will not serve you well and you'll probably have a more difficult time understanding that. But yeah, um, basically my study plan was chaos and it was the point of it was to master games over and over again and to get them faster. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Do you guys have any questions for Krishna? Or do you want to talk
I
about
just have a comment. You're gonna do well.
Yeah,
Go
you're gonna
score
kill
that 170 and let me know.
Thank you. I'm
You're
hoping.
gonna kill it.
I took one last PT on Thursday and I got a 176. So I'm writing that manifestation into tomorrow.
Yes, manifest, girl. I'll be praying for you. Let us know how you do.
Thank you. I will.
how long did it take you, do you think, to like, I guess, improve? Like, what was your timeline like?
So again, really weird question for me because I was really good at games to begin with, not because I'm intelligent or anything, but because like the circumstances of who I am as a person put me in a good position for games. Like I was a philosophy minor. I grew up doing puzzles. So just the circumstances of my education and what I've done put me in a good place for games. So my timeline isn't going to be what anyone else's timeline is like. What I really had to do for games was to get a better strategy. I was relying on inferences and worlds and it was taking up too much time. I could get them all right, but it took me like 45 minutes. So I switched up my method to brute forcing. And then after that, it was like a quick, like 2 week progression into like, oh, now I can get this down. Like once I realized my method wasn't working and I started brute forcing instead, like in 2 weeks, like I was comfortable brute forcing and I was getting everything right or most everything right. And then it was just a matter of practicing the weirder games. So again, my timeline is like not normal. This is why I hesitate to like tell anyone my timeline because it's not normal and it's not going to help most students. Your timeline likely will take longer, but the good thing is logic games is the quickest thing to improve. So even if it takes longer, it won't take you as long as you expect it to. Like Ronley, for example, like you didn't think you'd improve this quickly.
Yeah, no, I've never done logic games before this class, like ever. This was my first like intro to it, and I'm shocked at how quickly I was able to pick it up.
And I'm willing to bet for like most of you too. Like if the methods make sense to you, you're gonna pick it up quickly too. Maybe not as quickly as everyone else, but quicker than you think you will. Anyone have any questions for me?
No, go watch The Bachelorette.
Yeah.
Yay, tomorrow. You're gonna kill it.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna turn my camera off and mute myself. If anyone has any questions, feel free to email me or message me. My number is literally the Zoom ID, like the 732 thing. That's my phone number. So hit me up whenever.
Hi, Krishna.
Hi.
Okay. Janadi, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I really did like logic games out of everything. I was heavily like I grew up being like a STEM major basically from my parents' end, so I always had like did science and puzzles and games and whatnot. So it was a lot easier for me because I knew there's always going to be one correct answer. Like you know that for a fact. Whereas like logical reasoning and like reading comp, I'm always like, oh, that sounds like that could fit. But what helped me the most was the foolproof plan. I like relied on Seven Sage a lot. because I started studying back in 2019, and that's before like LSAT came down with their hammer and was like, you have to pay for everything. But I like their foolproof plan and the idea that you continuously can do the games over and over again until you see a pattern. And like the test is very much patterns, especially with logic games. And I took my test again in January of this year, and I got the curveball. I got the newspaper game, which everyone was freaking out about. But I was able to get through it because I was able to combine like understanding easier games and applying that to a harder game. I think both Akarshna and Shri and I all agree on is being better at the easier games and being faster at them, which helps you become better at the harder games because you spend less time on the easier games and more time on the harder games. And it really just, it does take time, but it does become like kind of a tool you are able to use as you move on, because again, you notice the patterns, you know, you can pull from different games and be like, okay, this reminds me of this other game. And sometimes I often just do harder games now because again, that helps you understand and break down things. And I mean, it's a lot from what Akarshna said. It's just for me, I definitely needed to understand like the very actual logic of it, like if and the like sufficient and necessary, make sure the arrows go the right way. But I am someone who does rely on making inferences in worlds. I do like making worlds, so I just have a general idea of how the game goes. And additionally, I think a big thing is something I tell myself during the test, like if one of the rules is like a negative, like A cannot be with B, then I'm like, okay, what can A be with? So I turn any negative into a positive. That way I'm able to know what any inferences I might have missed and connecting anything that is duplicated twice in the rules. Those are some big things that helped me in games. But otherwise, I think a lot of it is just repetition. And once you like continue to do it over and over again, you'll see the patterns and be like, oh, I can pull from this game and this game, and like the whole idea of grouping and sequence all come kind of blend in together. So you're not really like, when you're taking the test, you're not really focusing on just grouping or just attacking it. You know how to do it just on the forefront and not trying to figure out how it goes by each section. But yeah.
Do you guys
I
have
don't
any questions for her?
And I would do games like 10 times, like the same game 10 times. Like I would make sure I got all the inferences right. I made sure I got all the questions right. And I made sure I got it in the timing I wanted it to be in. So that's what helped me a lot.
What was your timeline like?
My timeline, like, so I started studying in 2019. I was still like a senior in undergrad. Yeah, it was my last year of undergrad, but like just trying to graduate and study for this test was a lot more than I thought. And I just relied on the Power Square books because I didn't really understand anything else. And I soon realized like the Power Square books are good in terms of giving you like a foundation, but they're not good enough in terms of deep diving in. So I think the Power Square books are good if you have time to like, you know, really read through them because they are thick books. But I used that, and then I went to Loophole, which helped me a lot with logical reasoning because it helped me understand it in a critical thinking sense. And then I just kind of focused on what I needed help with. So I had a tutor, so I had Nicole. I had numerous tutors really, and Nicole was just the best one because she kind of helped me understand like, okay, this is what I need to critically think about it, not just like think this is a standardized test and just move on with my life. Like I would bring it into my real life, honestly. Like people would say most or some, or like I'd be like, oh, well, that's a flaw in the argument because of this. And I know it's definitely annoying about it, but like it definitely helped because I was always constantly thinking about the LSAT logic, like the logic that the test wanted, which helped me a lot with reading comp and with logical reasoning as well. And another thing was just like quality over quantity, right? Like I have a full-time job, and so I would just study for 2 or 3 hours after work. I wasn't about to like study several hours after work and probably get nothing done. Like I had a schedule and I would write down in my agenda what I was going to study for the week and what I needed to do. And then during my lunch breaks, I would review questions. So I like stuck to a very hardcore schedule just to help me study and be more on top of it. But again, everyone's different. But I know most of you guys do have work or something along the lines of that. So I recommend doing that, just it helps you feel like you have like a checklist and you feel a little bit more accomplished and you know you're getting things done. But yep.
Okay, I'll do mine. So basically, I was similar to Nadi in that I had a schedule. Um, Before I had a schedule, I was studying not efficiently. I had I had the Power Score Bible for logic games, but when I was doing stuff in there, I was doing some things timed and stuff, but it just wasn't as helpful because had never done like a full section, honestly, or like when I did, it was like really, really rare. And I just wasn't repeating games. And so I wasn't making those connections and patterns that would have, I think, helped me more. So eventually when Law Hub was released and I found it, that's what really helped me because it made it super easy to repeat games. Before that, it was pretty hard to repeat games because you'd have to like print out 10 copies of every game that you wanted to repeat or other things like that. But just Law Hub being already online and all you have to do is like click a button and you have a new copy of the game. That just made things like more efficient and easy and like simple and straightforward. And so I started repeating games and I used like a slightly modified version of the foolproof method, which is Seven Sages method. And what I would do is if I would time individual games for myself. And so Seven Sage has like their individual recommended time limit for games online for free. And so I would like set a timer for that time, whatever it was for that game. Like the shortest games, I think are supposed to take you like 5 minutes, and the longest ones are like 14 minutes. And so like I would set myself that timer, do the game. I would, even if the timer ran out, I would finish, right? So like I would still finish, and I would see how long I went over by too. So then I would know, okay, how long did this game take me and how many did I miss? And if I went either over or if I like missed questions, then I would repeat that game. Some games you only have to repeat once or like twice. Some games you genuinely have to repeat like 12 times. Like because but that's worth it because whatever you didn't get about that game, you should get. Especially if it's like a basic or more simple game. You're really hurting yourself by like skipping over that and trying to move on to something else because you're probably going to get stuck every time you see something similar to that and you might as well as just fix it when you've noticed it. And I think it was also helpful that I like had a collection of games that I was working on foolproofing, if that makes sense. And as soon as I realized that a game was just like I was repeating it a lot because I wasn't at that level, I like threw it out. Like I wasn't ready for it yet, if that makes sense. Like if I was just doing a game a lot of times but not improving at all, it's because I wasn't able to make those connections, and it probably was because I didn't build up certain basic skills. And so I came back to those games like a week later or 2 weeks later, and then I was able to do them because like doing some of those simpler games help me with those, if that makes sense. And so like having that process of like these are games that I'm doing, that I'm working on, and then if they were ones that I missed a lot of questions on but they were kind of simpler, I'd do them every day. I'd repeat them every day. If it was a game that I was like going over on a minute by, or if I was like missing like one question, I would do them less often because then it comes down to like silly mistakes or like smaller things. And so I didn't need to be like doing it every single day. I focused on the things that I was struggling with more in terms of like doing them every day, if that makes sense. And in terms of timeline, I was missing like 8 questions or so for like a logic game section I did in 35 minutes. And then after like switching to like the foolproof method and using Law Hub and all of this stuff, it took me like a little over a month and I had perfect scores. And it kind of all happened at once. Like the shift was really sudden to me and almost shocking, because I was like, oh, I didn't realize that I had improved until I like saw my scores improve all of a sudden. And I think it really was just like seeing patterns and making those connections. Like once you start noticing certain patterns, you notice them every time they come up, and it's just faster and faster and faster. And I think also like I had built up a really strong foundation for the easier games, which made the harder games like I had way more time to do them, similar to what Janadi and Akrishna said. Do you guys have any questions about anything I did or anything any of us did for our like study journey, or like anything we would recommend? Okay, next slide. It was just questions. Yeah, like, do you guys have any questions at all about anything about studying or study plans, schedules? If it helps, one thing I forgot to mention was I realized I was doing much better studying a little bit each day than like studying less often and trying to like study a bunch. Because for logic games to notice those patterns, like if you're doing them every day, you're way more likely to notice those patterns or to like remember them and apply them when you repeat the game, right? Versus if you're like spreading it out a lot and you're like have days in between when you don't see logic games for a while, you might let those connections that you've made just go, right? Versus if you like make those connections and reinforce them a bunch, you're way more likely to like really hold on to them and apply them in the future. Um, so today we thought we'd go over a harder game, just so you guys can see us work through a harder game, and you will probably see around one harder game on your LSAT. There's usually around one. Some games have like multiple medium games, or some sections they like switch them around, but on average it's like one harder exam or one harder game on the exam. It is more likely to be game 3 or game 4, but occasionally a hard game does show up on like game 2, but it's really rare, but it does happen. And then in terms of using study time efficiently, I wouldn't recommend doing a bunch of harder games now. Like it's good to occasionally see one. And you'll probably see one when you drill a section, right? When you do a 35-minute section, you'll probably see one anyways. But there's no need to like foolproof the harder games now. Like it's much better to foolproof timing and accuracy on the basic games so that you get a lot of those fundamental concepts down before you move on to the harder games. And that also leaves more time with working for harder games when you take a section, right? Like if you're really good at the easy ones, you have enough time to just brute force the harder ones or just think about the harder ones. And I would recommend, and I think Janadi and Akrishna would too, it's better to be accurate than to be fast because building accuracy takes much longer. It really does. Like if you're just really fast but you're just getting half of them wrong, um, that's going to take time to fix and it means you just don't understand certain concepts versus if you just give yourself the time to really understand what you're working with, like okay, this is the logic game section, I understand how to answer every question type, I understand what the different game types are, I understand what's going on in general, then working on speed, like that's just repetition, that's not the worst thing, and it happens on its own over time. As long as you're repeating games, you will improve on speed. So it's better to focus on accuracy instead of worrying about time. So I agree with what Akrishna said too about like if you feel like after a 35-minute section, like or during a 35-minute section, if you feel like you're not going to hit that time limit, stop worrying about the time. It's fine. Just make sure like you understand what you're doing and what you're doing is accurate, and you can come back and repeat those games and try to get the time down. So to practice, we're going to do PT 48 game 4 today. And if it's okay, I was thinking we should diagram separately for this game and then come back and share our diagrams, see if we could have diagrammed it any better, and then start working through the questions, if that's okay. So I'm going to set like a 5-minute timer for diagramming.
Serene, is it the 3 folk groups? Okay.
Yep, it's the game about 3 folk groups and 3 rock groups. Would you guys like another minute or so to diagram? Are you guys ready?
I'm done. I don't know if it's right.
Okay, we can start then. So if you guys would like to pin, wait, let me start the video. Okay, if you guys would like to pin the screen with my paper, can you guys see this? Okay.
Yes.
So this is how I diagrammed it. Do you guys have any general thoughts from this?
I diagram mine's differently. I put like the north and the south on one. Like I just drew a diagram, put the north and south on one. And next to north, I wrote 6, 8, and 10. And then next to south, I wrote 8, 10, and 12.
Okay, awesome. The only question I would have for you is it easy to tell what comes before what?
No, yours looks a lot different. I think I'll write this one.
Okay. The only concern I would have is when there's a sequencing game,
Mhm.
you want to be able to tell if you have any rules like this one, for example, that G has to come before H, or that
Right.
whatever has to come right before Q has to be G, H, or L. You want to make sure that you can see the sequence, right? You don't
Mhm.
um, you don't want to like have to sit and wonder every time you write something out, right? That
Right.
would take up a lot of time and it's confusing. So I would say try to prioritize the sequence when you have a sequence, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then I can go over all of the individual rules. For P performs at 6 or 12, you can definitely just write P at 6 or 12. I decided to diagram it like this, where I put that P can't go in 8 or 10. Mostly just because I don't like putting that a letter can go in two places just by like drawing that letter over the columns. Because then to me, that doesn't mean that it like can't go anywhere else or that it must go there, if that makes sense. Um, so that's why I decided to diagram it like this. I probably the other way I would have done that is to like put a P up here and draw arrows to 6 and 12. That's probably the other way I would have diagrammed that. With the GH rule that G has to come before H, that rule tells us that H can't go at 6, right? Because then there's no way for G to go before it. And that also tells us that G can't go at 12, right? Um, and then for the rule that says if any rock group performs at 10, no rock group does, or sorry, no folk group does, um, P can't go at 10 anyways, right? So that really just means if Q or T is at 10, then G, H, and L can't be at 10. I would recommend just writing down what letters they are because then you don't have to switch back and forth every time you're thinking about the rule, right? Another thing is sometimes you're just trying to think about the rules that apply and you have no idea if this rule applies if you just write folk or rock, right? You don't know, oh, like I just put Q in 10. Does that mean I put a like rock song in 10? You'll have to check every single time, right? It's much easier just to, when they like give you something like this, it's much easier to just write down what variables they're talking about because then you don't have to flip back and forth as much. Um, the next rule, L and T perform on different stages. I diagram that like this, like they're gonna go on the north or south stage and it can be either one, they just have to be on different stages. So I like drew that double-sided arrow. And then for the last rule, Q performs immediately after a folk group, though not necessarily on the same stage. So it just has to come like right after some folk group, and folk group just means G, H, or L, right? So I just decided to write the variables again instead of writing the F so that I don't have to flip back and forth every time I'm looking at that rule.
Oh, so much smarter.
I like the way you did it better, but I
Yeah.
mean, you made all those inferences just from that, and I didn't do that.
Yeah, I didn't do that either.
That's okay. I don't think, honestly, this isn't even, I don't know if this counts as inferences, like putting in the letters, but I really like doing that because when I don't, I get way, way more confused. Like this is already confusing enough with all the rules, right? I don't want to like be flipping back and forth every single time to think, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? I like knowing like what rules apply as soon as I write in a letter. I like knowing, oh, like if I have Q, I know this rule applies and I know this rule applies, right? It's much easier to like think in that sort of way when you know what letters you're talking about instead of like thinking of them as broad categories.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any other questions about like why I did something a certain way or whether some other diagram or rule would work well? Okay, do you guys think you guys like can see how this could be a harder game just from having like diagrammed it or just from having like read
Yeah.
it? There's just a lot going on, right? And it's kind of like complex. And it seems like there's a lot of restriction, right? About like where letters can go and like what's going on. Usually when you have a hard game, you find out pretty early on, I would say. Okay, are you guys ready to start the first question?
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone want to walk me through 18? Anyone? It's okay. It's not scary. And I can like help along the way. I'll ask like good leading questions.
I'll try it for you.
Awesome. Okay, so 18's asking, just to set it up, they're asking what could be a complete and accurate ordering of performances on the North stage. So this is the North stage, right? We're only thinking about the performances there. So that's 6, 8, and 10, right? That's what we're thinking
Right.
for these combinations. Perfect. Go ahead.
So basically we know that, oh, so we know that L or T is going to be in the equation.
Mhm.
If we have L and T together, then we know we can cross that answer out.
Exactly. Yep. So which one
So
would
we're
you?
going to cross out D.
Exactly.
Okay. And then if we have Q at 10, so do they go in order like 6, 8, 10?
Yes, because they
So,
say from first to last in the question, right? So they're
yes.
giving you the answers first to last. So that would be 6, 8, 10 in that order.
So if we have Q at 10, so we do have Q at 10, then we know G, H, and L can't come out. So B would be out
Why would B be out again?
because we can't have G, H, or L if Q's in 10, right?
If Q's in 10, we can't have G, H, or L also in 10, right? What's the other space? Wouldn't that be the south stage space?
Oh, okay. So I guess they could be a 12 then.
Yeah,
Too.
yes, yeah. So B is only talking about 6, 8, and 10. So what B would look like is if we wrote in G, Q, and H here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Q is an 8, right?
Right.
You were saying that G, H, or L can't be at 10. That's only if Q or T is at 10. So you're saying if H, it would mean that T is over here, and we don't know that for sure, right?
No, we don't.
But do you see another issue with this one?
I thought it was because H is a 10, but I guess that's not the rule then.
No, H is fine at 10 as long as L is going here, right? There just can't be a rock group at 10. So what's the other folk song we have left? We already used G, we already used H, so the other letter we have left is L, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can put L here. That's fine. This rule works out, right? Q or T
Mm-hmm.
is not at 10, so G, H, and L are fine there. What else? What other rules do we need to fulfill? G before H, that's true. We have
Right.
G before Q, which is fine, right? Because G can be before Q. What's
Right.
the only other rule?
Oh, T. You need T.
Exactly. Yeah. L and T. Can we put L and T on the same stage?
No.
No, we can't put L and T on the same stage. We can't. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Does that make sense
Mm.
how we can, so if L and T both have to go on different stages, that means yes, if they're both in the north stage, we can cross that out. But what if they're both missing from the north stage?
We have to cross it out.
Exactly. So this happens a lot for games with like grouping where they say certain letters can't go together. If they're both in or if they're both in a certain group, yes, cross that out. But if they're both missing, that means you put them together in the other side. Right? So you can
Oh.
look when you're looking for this rule, right? You can look for
Mm-hmm.
things that put L and T together, but you can also look for things that are missing both L and T.
Got you. That makes sense. So B and C would be out too then.
B would be out and C would be out too. Exactly. Because C is also missing L and T, which means it put them both on the south stage.
Right.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That makes sense.
Yeah. And the other issue with C is C put H first, right? G has to go sometime before H, and so H can't be at 6.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That's 2 reasons to cross out C.
Okay, so now we have E and A, and then we know P has to be in 6 or P has to be in 12.
Right.
So P is in 6, and then the first one we don't have P.
Right.
But P can be on the other stage.
Exactly. P could be on the other stage at 12, right? So that's not a big deal. Do you want to look at another rule then?
Yeah, we have. It have to be Q and L then that we're looking at
Q and L.
because they're both Q and L. And then we have a G.
Right. So we looked at this rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're not sure how to use this rule because we only know about one of the numbers at 10, right? So the
Right.
other number could like make up for it, if that makes sense, or the other letter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then so we use this one, kind of. Did we really think about this one yet?
So we have to have G, H, and L before Q.
Yeah,
Oh, so you can knock out E.
exactly. And the reason why is because before Q, they put P, and 6 only has one stage performing at it, right? So it's not like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, G, H, or L could have gone on the south stage because there is no south stage, right?
Right.
The only space before Q, and this space has to be taken by G, H, or L when Q is going at 8, right? So E has P going there, and that can't work because then P is the only one before Q.
Oh, so G, H, and L has to go before Q then. So that's why E's wrong.
Exactly, yeah. G, H, or L have to go right before Q, even if they're on different stages. So if Q was at 12, for example, it's fine as long as G, H, or L are going at here or here.
That's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's why harder games are harder because there's so much going on, right?
Are you able to put, does this now, are we able to pull the inference then that P is always at 12 instead of 6 from this?
No, because P could be at 6, right? Like we could have P here as long as if like Q is going here, for example, then just one of these has to be.
Q is going where? Sorry, you're pointing at 2 places.
Yeah, okay. So if P is going here, right at 6, if P is there,
Mhm.
if Q is going over here, for example, somewhere at 10, then
Mhm.
something at 8, basically.
Oh, right. Got it. Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This combination never worked anyways, right? So we can cross this out. That's not helpful. So we're picking A for this one. Does that make sense? Why? So A is just
does.
saying G, L, and Q, right, are going here. So what would be going at 8, 10, and 12?
So we know P would go in 12.
Exactly. P has to go at 12, right?
What's left?
What's left? We have T left, and then we have H left.
H.
Can we put H here?
No, we have to put H in 8 because it still has to go before Q. Right?
Oh, well, L can also go before Q, right?
Yeah, but L's already before Q and G's already before Q.
Oh, okay. All 3 of them don't have to go before Q.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I can see how that would be. It's just it's just one of these.
Got it. Okay.
It's just one space before Q, sorry.
Got it. Got it. Then it doesn't matter, does it? Oh, no. Wait. Hold on. What's this rule? QT at 10. I forget what this rule is already. 1, 2, 3. New rock group performs at 10. No folk group does. Yeah, that's fine. So you could put T at 10.
Mm-hmm. Can you put H at 10 though?
No, because of rule number 3.
Exactly. This is saying if Q or T is at 10, which Q is at 10 here, right? So this
Yeah.
conditional rule follows. It's saying G, H, or L can't be at 10. That
Right.
means H can't be here, so H has to go here,
Right.
right? And then that means T must go here.
This game's hard.
I know. But does it make sense though? Like, do you guys understand how we got here?
Yeah, but if you wasn't on here, I
Yeah.
would have been calling you.
Yeah, same. Exactly the same.
It's
Yeah.
okay, because the more simple games you do though, the connections that you need to do something like this, they get faster and faster and faster, right? The fact that you have to consider all your rules and stuff, like you train yourself to think about those things because you're trying to finish these simple games faster and faster. And all of that stuff helps a lot when you try to do these harder games later.
Yeah.
So I think A would be the answer for 18. Does anyone want to try 19? Or we can all just collectively try it together. They're asking which one of the following groups has to perform earlier than 10. So earlier than 10 just means before here, right? This is all earlier than 10, right? Everything on this side.
Mhm.
So when they ask which of the following groups must perform earlier than 10, can we cross anything out using this combination?
H and P.
H and P. Do we know whether H has to perform earlier than 10?
No, I think if the answer is G, because G has to come before H, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I think G is a great answer to try out first.
Yeah.
And I
Maybe I'm wrong.
no, I completely agree with you. I think G is a great one to try out first. I completely agree. And it's because of that rule, right?
Yeah, that's where I got it from.
So this is a sequencing type question, right? Because they're asking what has to come earlier than something. And the only sequencing rules you have are this and this, right? And this
Mhm.
one, it's really vague because it's saying G, H, or L has to come before Q. Like that's not super strong, right? That's a weaker rule. It's saying just one of these letters has to come right before Q. But this one, it's saying G has to come before H. And G is in both of these rules anyways, right? So G is a great one to try out first. The only
Mhm.
thing I was going to point out is here, we know that Q, for example, doesn't have to perform earlier than 10, right? Because we have an example where it's performing at 10 or later.
Right.
Same with T, same with P. So even before you like start thinking of things, you can automatically just cross out P and T. Does that make sense
Hmm.
for why we can do that?
Yes, because you already have it marked up, so you know, like it could come last or second.
Exactly. We know that these can come like at 10 or later. So we know that these don't have to perform earlier than 10, right? So we can cross out answer options D and E because they don't have to perform earlier than 10. They can perform at 10 or later. And if Q was an option, we could have also crossed out Q. And then so now let's consider G. Where do you guys want to try putting G?
I'll put it 6.
Oh, I would have done the opposite, putting it on the other side.
Yeah, if you put it
10.
at 6, do we know whether it must perform earlier than 10?
No.
We would just know what
No,
we
it
already
could
know.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, we would just know that it could. So I would say try putting it at 10.
Yeah.
Can we put it at 12 at all? Anyways?
No.
No, right? So you have to put it at 10. So does it matter where we put it?
Do we have to put it on the south stage because it has to come before H? But I don't know if H can be on the north or the south.
I think so. It does this say H has to be on the north or the south? Sorry.
No.
No. So I think we could put it on either. Like either is equally fine. Does that make sense for why?
Hmm.
It doesn't matter where we put it because there's no rules saying like north or south
Yeah.
for any of these.
Either way, there's still a show after 10, so it's fine.
Exactly. And so what has to go at 12 because of this?
P.
Yep, exactly. So wait, these are
Oh,
all
wait. Does it?
great question. Not P. I meant
H. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, H. And then we know P has to go.
Oh yeah, at 6.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Sorry. I was thinking in my head, H and P, we know where they have to go. G has to come before H, right? So this is the only place we can put H. This is like set in stone, right? We know this is the only place this can go. We know this is the only place this can go, right? We put this letter here. What has to be in this last spot for the north stage?
Oh, L or T.
Exactly. Yep. L or T, right? And then what has to be here? Because if G is in 10, right? Remember how if Q or T are in 10, then G, H, and L can't be in 10?
Right.
For example, wait, can Q go here?
Yeah.
Q has to come right after G, H, or L.
Oh, no. Oh, wait, but Q can't go anywhere now then.
Right, because Q can't go here, right? Q can't go here because if Q goes here, then G's not allowed to go here
Right.
because of this. But then this space we already filled, right, with H. And so can Q go anywhere?
No.
No. So does this work?
No. So
No.
our answer is A. G.
Exactly. G has to perform earlier than 10. So we now have our new rule, right? G can't perform at 12, but G also can't perform at 10. Not happening. Does that make sense how we got there? And if you wanted to test out either H or L, you could try putting H in 10 or 12, and same with L, right? You could just try putting them sometime at 10 or after and see if that works. Does that make sense? That's how you would like brute force your way through this or cross certain things out. Before you brute force, if you did write down your first combination, it's helpful because you can automatically cross out D or E and never even have to think about them. Okay. Awesome. So next is number 20. Which one of the following groups could perform at 6? Any thoughts?
Well, we know G can.
Yeah. Would that be your answer?
I would say yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We have right here that G can go at 6, right? We know for sure G can go at 6, and that has to be our answer, right? Does that make sense? So now, based off of that, if you wanted to, you could also write down, hey, L can't go 6 at 6, Q can't go then, and T can't go then, right? We already know that H can't, but now we know, hey, L can't, Q can't, and T can't either. So what are the numbers that can go 6?
Well, we know P can,
Mm-hmm.
G can.
Yep, it has to be P or G, right? Because we've crossed out everything else now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sometimes when things are really chaotic, like any little bit of information that you find, right, it can help the chaos a little bit.
I think I'd be too scared to make that assumption as I'm like working my way through the puzzle.
Sure. Okay. So what do we know from 20? Like when they say which one of the following groups could perform at 6, doesn't that mean that only one of them can perform at 6?
Mhm.
So that means if we pick something as the answer, we know for sure the rest of them can't perform at 6.
Right.
Because otherwise then you'd have 2 correct answers for 20.
Right.
Right? So when you pick A and you're like, oh, I know G can perform at 6, you can feel really confident that H, L, Q, and T can't. Otherwise, this question wouldn't make sense, right? This like G is the only one out of the answer options they gave you that could perform at 6. So if you add those 4, that's 4 out of your 6 variables that are gone, right? So the only ones you even have left are P or G,
Yeah.
right? You'll also get more and more comfortable like making those kinds of inferences. The more games that you do and the more confident you get with them.
Yeah, this one's a toughie. If you were in here to like walk us through it, I would probably throw my pencil.
That's honestly fair. I think this one's also really hard because the diagram, right? I think this isn't like the most intuitive way to diagram it because they repeated 6, 8, and 10 and like 8, 10, and 12. So it's
Mhm.
not clear that like this is the linear order that they're talking about. It's not super intuitive. But if you don't set it up this way, it's really hard to tell what's before
Yeah.
what, right? It really messes you up in terms of these 2 rules if you don't set it up this way.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And then for 21, if Q performs at 12, right? So they're telling us Q's performing here at 12. So let's see. If Q's going here, which of the following could be an accurate ordering of the performances on the north stage from first to last? They're saying if Q's performing there, what's an accurate ordering for these 3 spaces, right?
Okay, so we know P's in 6.
Exactly. P has to be in 6th, right? Because P can only go here or here anyways. So can we cross anything off based on just that?
A.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because A is starting with G, right? What's another issue with A?
Oh, it's got Q in it.
Which makes no sense, right? Because they already gave us where Q's gonna go. Exactly. A is not a good answer. Any other thoughts about stuff that's the answer choices?
E.
E?
Yes, because it has L and T together.
Exactly. Right. That can't happen. L and T can't be on the same stage, and E is putting them both on the north stage together. So that's not happening. Any other thoughts about B, C, and D?
I would cross out B.
B and why?
Because it says PHT, and with that combo, G can't go before H.
Exactly. Yep. If you had P, H, and T, where's G gonna go before H? Right? Can it go anywhere?
No.
No, right? Exactly. B's gone. Any thoughts about C and D?
So would C be going too? Because there's no H.
Great question. So H just has to come after G, right? If you had
Mhm.
P, T, and G, is there space for H after G?
No, so would D be out then because there's no G before the H?
Great question. Okay, D is saying P, T, and H. Is there space for the G before the H?
Yeah,
No.
you can put it at 8 o'clock on the south side.
Oh, I'll kick you on the other side.
If it
Yes.
helps, if it helps for you guys to visualize things, I would recommend when you're thinking about each one, just write it out. It takes you
Okay.
like 5 extra seconds, right? And then you're way less likely to make mistakes. If you can like visually see, oh, there's space for this letter or there isn't space for this letter, write every single one out.
Okay, that makes sense because it can go on the other side.
Exactly. Versus if we had P, T, and G here, H can't go in this space,
Yeah.
right? Which is why C doesn't work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does.
P, T, and H. And then so G, what's the last letter that we would have here?
No, L.
L.
Yeah, exactly. And does that work out? Is there any issue with that at all?
No, that works.
That
Yeah.
works, right? So D would be our answer. Okay, and then last question. If a rock group performs at 10, then which one of the following must be true? Any thoughts on how you guys want to do this one?
My group performs at 10. I would look at like that first diagram.
Okay, so here we have rock group performing at 10, right? We have
Mhm.
2 of them. So which one of the following must be true? A folk group performs at 6. Is that a must be true thing?
No.
But maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have a folk group here, so we can't cross that one out. I would leave that one open.
Yeah.
A folk group performs at 8.
Yeah.
That happens, right? So I would leave that one open as well. We don't know if that's a must be true thing, but we know it can happen, right?
Yeah.
So I would leave that open. A folk group performs at 12.
No.
No, right? That here we have an example of a rock group performing at 12. So we know that it's not a must be true thing that a folk group performs then, right?
Mhm.
So we can confidently cross out C. Does that
Right.
make sense for why we can cross out C?
Yeah. And then we can knock out D also.
A rock group performs at 8. Here we have 2 folk groups, right? L and H are both folk groups, right? So we don't have a rock group performing at 8 here, meaning it doesn't have to happen. So I'd cross out D. And then E, a rock group performs at 12, maybe, right? What do you guys think about A and E?
Oh, those are interchangeable because you can have P in 6 or 12. So we can knock that out. That's not a must be true. You can have
Yeah.
P or G in 6 and 12.
Yeah, and 6. Well, can you put G in 12?
No.
No, but you could maybe shift things around, right? Because we know for a fact that P in general can go at 6. So maybe we want to try an example where we have some sort of rock group at 10 and we put P in 6. Right.
Okay.
Can we see if that works?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we put Q and T, for example, here still, and put P over here, what do you guys want to do next? What has to go here?
What has to go where? Sorry, you pointed fast.
Is it H?
No, L.
L, right? Because we only have one
Oh.
space left on the north stage and it has to go to either L or T. So since we already have T here, this has got to be L.
And then G can go south at 8 and then H at 12.
Exactly. And is there any issues with what we did here?
No.
No.
So based off of this, what can we cross out?
What did we just plug in? The 10? I don't even know what we just plugged in
Oh,
anymore.
no. Does it even matter what we just plugged in? Because we the only local rule is that a rock group performs at 10, right?
Right. Okay.
We have
Sorry.
two rock groups here.
Yeah. So we can cross out a folk group performs at 6.
Right, because a folk group doesn't have to perform at 6, right? We have a rock group here. Can we cross out E?
Yeah, we can cross out E.
Yeah, a rock group doesn't have to perform at 12, right? Here we have an example of a folk group performing at 12. So we can also cross out E, meaning our answer has to be a folk group must perform at 8,
Got it.
right? Does that make sense? How we did that question?
Time consuming, but yes.
For sure. And I don't think I have enough space, I guess, to show you guys properly. Maybe I can try. I hope you guys will understand if I just draw the lines like this to show you guys something, right? I just wanted to point out this question's very directly talking about this rule, right? This is saying if a rock group performs at 10. So that basically triggers like this rule, right? Or it sets off this rule. So that means G, H, and L can't go at 10. So the spaces for G, H, and L, we have to put them somewhere, right? They're not going at 10. They're not going there. So no matter where you put G, H, and L, doesn't one of them have to go at 8? Because you have 3 letters that you're trying to fit in these spaces, right? So even if you put one of them here and one of them here, at least one of them still has to go here.
Oh, yeah.
Good inference. Why didn't you show us that in the beginning? No.
Because you might never see that, right? On test day, like your brain will just be like frazzled and you'll be like all over the place, right? Because you're like trying to finish and you
Right.
don't always see every inference. And that's okay because going through the question, like being able to go through the question, that always works, right? Whether or not, sorry.
But what you just did was a lot easier. Like,
No, I totally agree. But like that's harder and harder to notice, I think, as you're beginning. Like the more and more inferences you make and the more and more games you do in general, you'll see this question and you'll think, oh wait, they're asking about a rock group performing at 10. They're just directly talking about this rule, right? This is literally what they're talking about. That means G, H, and L can't go at 10. So they're not going here, meaning I have these spaces left to put them in, right? No matter what I do, at least one of them has to go at 8, right? There's no other way to like spread those letters out. But that's not, you can do this without making that connection at all. And that's good to know because then I hope you'll feel confident that like a lot of times when you base everything off of inferences, if you don't see the inference, you feel like, okay, I failed. Like you feel kind of panicked because you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be seeing because I'm not seeing it. But you can do any question without seeing those kinds of inferences because you can just brute force them or you can just go off of your past combinations, eliminate some answers, and then brute force the stuff you have left, right? Does
I
that
have
make
a question.
Mhm.
What if you switch T and Q around in that problem for
Here?
number 22? Yeah.
Great question. So if you switch Q and T, that just means you have to switch these two, right?
But then if you switch those two, oh, never mind. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Doesn't
Sorry.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. In this game, it's not super important whether something is on the north stage or south stage, right? The only time it really ends up mattering, and you don't know this when you've written down the game, right? This is just like after you having done the game, it really only matters because there's only one space here and one space here. That's one reason why it matters, right? And the other reason it matters is for the L and T rule. But other than that, in general, like we don't really care whether something is on the north or south stage. We're just trying to keep track of, okay, does it have enough space for something to go before it or after it? And then is L going on one stage and is T going on the other? The only reason if we flip these that we'd have to flip these is because we want L and T to be on different stages. That's it.
Yeah, totally. That's why I was asking the question of because I was looking at it, I was like, wait a second, but that flips that, and that. But I didn't put together L and G are the same side anyway. So
yeah,
both folk.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter. Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. And you could also here flip G and P, if I'm not mistaken, right? No, you can't. P can't go at 8. I take it
P
back.
goes to 12.
You can't. Yeah, P has to go at 6 or 12. That doesn't work. I was just trying to think whether you could have a situation where you have one rock group here instead of 2 folk groups. but I don't think you can, just based off of what I've done, because you need 2 of the rock groups to be here, and then
Right.
it has to go either here or here. So both of these
Right.
have to be folk groups.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, right, it's not going here, it's not going here, and then one of these spaces is taken up by P. Right? So your 3 folks groups songs, like you're gonna have one here. This one's gonna be folk, this one's gonna be folk, and one of these is gonna be folk because the other one's gonna have to be P.
Cool.
Cool. Any questions in general about a harder game or like how to think about it, how to get through it? Any questions?
No, I just need to go through these more in order to like really start to see it.
Yeah, and I would say personally what I did is I only looked at hard games when I got them through like a 35-minute section so that I didn't overwhelm myself with hard games and like lose focus on the easier games and like building my skills with easier games. So like do them when you come across them, like because you're doing a 35-minute section or something, but don't go out of your way to like seek them out and try to foolproof those before you've mastered the basics. Because when
Cool.
you master the basics, you really help yourself out on time.
That makes sense.
That's everything that I had with this game. Do you guys have any other general thoughts or questions?
Can we go through that circle game that was
Yeah,
assigned for homework?
For sure. I can just do it on here.
And then I just have one question about the other game also that was assigned. And it's literally the very first question. So we can also do that one real quick. Because
Sounds good. Which game was the circle game again? Could you?
it was PT 41 game 4.
Okay, let's do that one first.
Yeah.
41 and 4. Oh, this one has like so many questions.
I know.
Okay, wait, let me open up a new version of the test. Okay, so this one, is it okay if I diagram this in front of you guys?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this one's just talking about 8 people. F, G, H, I, K, M, O, P. I always do the circle games with like the spokes instead of putting them in a chart because I think it's visually, it makes more sense to me. So like for this, right, in general, I'm gonna have something that looks like this. Does that make sense as to why?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's 8 people, which means I'm drawing like 4 lines. That gives me 8 spaces around the circle. So they're sitting evenly spaced around a circular picnic table. If they're sitting directly across from each other, there's 3 people in between them, right? So directly across would mean like here and here, and there'd be 3 people between them on either side. So Fiona sits directly across from George, right? So that would look something like this. It doesn't matter what line you pick because it's a circle. Like you could start anywhere. Harriet sits immediately next to neither Fiona nor Carl. So H can't be next to F or K, right? So no F, no K, right?
Oh, the way you diagram that is so much better. Yeah.
And then Ingrid sits immediately next to and immediately clockwise from Olivia. So from Olivia, if you go clockwise, right, which is this way, right, clockwise, then you get to Ingrid, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. And they're right next to each other. So if you want to like write it like that, or if you want to box them in next to that, but right next to O is I. So what do we know? Do you guys think that there's anything you can connect back to like when you're thinking about a diagram like this from here?
So we know H isn't going to be in the seats next to F.
Yep, exactly. And that's probably the only connection I would really make, right? You also know, for example, that like O can't go before G, but like how I don't know how helpful that even really is to think that far and like think about all those things. But yeah, exactly. H isn't going right next to F. That's probably the only thing I would have thought before I started this game. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, so does anyone want to walk me through question 18? 18 is asking which one of the following could be 4 people in a row counting clockwise.
Wait, let me pull up the test.
Which prep was it?
This is
PT 41.
41, game 4, which starts on question 18.
Okay. Which one of the following could be the order in which 4 of the people are seated? Okay. So you can get rid of anything with K, H, or F next to each other. Well, no, H and F, or K and F next to each other. Oh, so E.
Mm-hmm.
O and I have to be next to each other, so you can get rid of D.
Yep.
Maybe left there. Oh, you can get rid of A because G and F don't have enough spaces in between them.
Exactly. So if we're thinking about any 4 spaces, we're thinking about like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You can't have both of them in the same combination here because they need 3 seats in between them. Right?
What do we have left? B and C?
Yeah, we have B and C left.
I don't know why B doesn't work yet. Oh, no, JK, not that. O, I, F, G. I don't know why B doesn't work. But I see.
Can you guys see both of these at the same time?
Not really.
That's fair. Try just in case. Okay, so for B, if things have to have 3 seats in between them, this is kind of similar to the last game where L and T, like, yes, we want to make sure that they don't both show up on the same side. We also want to make sure that they're both not missing. Right? Because this is going over 4 spaces, and in any 4 spaces that you pick, you're gonna have one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So if both of them are missing, for example, in B, you don't have F or G.
Oh, right. Okay, so yeah, that's why we get rid of B then.
Yeah, because if both of them are missing, you're squishing F
Right.
and G onto the other 4 seats.
Right, right,
That can't happen.
right.
And this is also similar to like what Janadi said before. It's called like negative deductions. And it's like when they give you a rule, you want to think like if they tell you something can't happen, think about what can happen and vice versa, right? Like if you know something's going on, there's something else that's also going on. If something can't be true, what can be true? If something can be true, what can't be true? Or like, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the answer is C for 18.
Yes. And what would that look like? So going clockwise from F, it would be P and M, right? And so I would be before. If I's here, O is going here, right?
Right.
What letters do we have left?
K and H.
And does it matter where K and H are going?
No.
No, we don't have any rules about those that are relevant here, right?
Right.
So I would just put at H/K for both of those.
Okay.
Awesome. And then so 19, if H and O sit immediately next to George, if they each sit immediately next to George. So let's just put in F and G at the beginning. So if H and O are immediately next to G, which side does O have to go on?
Wait, if H and O are immediately next to G.
Right, which side does
Oh, so it needs to go to the left of G.
exactly, or else there's no space for I.
Right.
Right, so O and I go over here, and then over here we would have the H, right? We know that H can't be next to F or K, right? So K
Right.
is gonna have to go here or here, right? K
Okay.
can't go here. So I
Right.
probably put like little K's there, and maybe something else can go there too.
Okay.
We're trying to figure out who can sit next to Peter, right? Where can Peter go?
I mean, Peter can literally go in any of those spots then.
Right, so I'd put Peter everywhere. And then what's the last letter that we have left?
M, and M is also a floater and can go in any of those spots.
Yep, no issue. So what's going on? What can P be next to? Can P be next to F and K?
Can P be next to F and K if P is here? No.
I don't think so, right? If P is over here, okay, we can have F on one side, but we can't have K on the other side. P's over here, we can't do F and K. P's over here, we can't do F and K,
Right.
right? So we're gonna have to cross A out. Can P be next to F and O?
Can P be next to F and O? No.
No, F and O aren't even like,
Close to each other.
so that's not happening. So we can cross P out. H and I?
No.
Nope. H and K?
Maybe. That's possible.
That one's possible, right? Yeah, because if we put P here, H can go on one side, K can go on the other side, and then M can go over here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's going to be our answer because that's possible.
Okay, what's E? What's the answer choice?
E is saying K and M. So K and M, can P be between K and M?
No. So
No.
it is E.
Yeah, because if P's here, it can't be between K and M. Same if it's here, right? Because F is going to be one on the side. Same if it's here. F is going to be.
Oh, I see what I did wrong. I didn't make K like a. I basically plugged K into seat number 3 pretty like affirmatively and just played with M and P as like the numbers back or the letters back and forth. That's why I was confused with that one. Okay, sorry.
No worries. No worries. Does that make sense? How I
Yeah.
did,
Yeah.
how we knew?
Yeah.
Okay.
So annoying that I didn't get that. Yeah.
It's okay. So the next one is saying if G doesn't sit immediately next to H. In both of these, G is sitting immediately next to H, right?
Mhm.
So we're gonna need a new combination. So let's see. If we make these F and G again, if G isn't sitting next to H, who could be the two people next to Manuel? So if G isn't sitting next to H could go in where?
Well, it can't go next to F.
Right.
So, and I mean, it could go in the other spots, it looks like.
These two?
Yeah. And
Exactly.
also the ones at the bottom, no?
Oh, so the local rule is that G doesn't sit immediately next to H.
Oh, sorry. That's my bad. I thought you said M before. Okay. Yeah. So just those two. Yeah.
Right. So then H can't go here, here, can't go here, here. So H though can go like here or here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're asking who are the two people sitting next to Manuel. So whichever side we put H on, what's going on the other side?
I have no idea.
That's so fair. O and I take up 2 spaces in a row.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you need to put O and I together on the other side. Sorry. I thought you meant directly on the other side of H.
No,
So on the
that's
other side of
I didn't word that super well either. So yeah, when we put H here, like whenever you have a rule like this, you want to be thinking spatially, like, okay, this takes up 2 spots.
mm-hmm.
So when I do something like this here, O and I can no longer go on this half.
Right.
It's like this, the spaces are broken up, and so
Right.
it needs to go somewhere on this side,
Right.
right?
You can have O and I literally, you can have O starting in that spot after G. You can have it in that spot after it. Or you
Right.
can have I right where your pen is and then I right in that spot after that.
Perfect. Yep, exactly. And then so we can just try one, honestly.
Okay.
We know that it's flexible though, right? The reason why I'm not writing out all the dashes, all the slashes here is because
Mhm.
there's so many options.
Okay.
We know if one of these doesn't work out, we know what to write out next.
Mm-hmm.
We can put H on this side, or we can put O and I here. Like as long as we know what's going on, it's fine.
Okay.
To not do the slashes. And then so they're asking who sits next to M. Can F and H sit immediately next to M?
Yeah.
Yeah, they can, right? Because we have a blank space here and we could just stick M right there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
have we considered all of our rules? So we know H can't go next to K or F. We would just have to put K.
Yeah, opposite. Oh, wait. No, H. Yeah. Where you had it between F and I.
So what I would do is before like confirming that M can go here, I'd just make sure that we followed this one rule. Because let's say like for some reason M couldn't go here because M had to go somewhere else as the buffer between H and K or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's good to just make sure that rule is also being fulfilled. But since it is, this is totally fine, right? This works.
Mm-hmm.
So you
And
could
where M is, you can also have P, right? It could be MP, and then H,
Mhm.
between H and G, you can have M and P also, right?
for sure. So if you want, you could write it out like this. But M, yeah, you're right. But M can go between F and H, right? So you could pick A and move on.
Cool.
Okay. And then 21, if M sits immediately next to O, do we have an example of that?
No.
No. More combinations. Okay. So F and G, my circle is like becoming less and less of a circle.
I know, mine too.
So if M is sitting right next to O, what does that mean?
M is sitting right next to O. I is on the other side of O.
Right. So now they're giving you 3 letters in a row, right? It has to be either M-O-I or M-O-I,
Right.
right? Is there a restriction to either one of those?
M-O-I, if we put it here, then we get stuck with H and K, but we can put P there. No.
No, you can do either. So I'm just going to do it randomly. Let's just put it over here, right? So if M and O and I are going there, they're asking who has to sit immediately next to Fiona. So they're asking about this spot over here.
Oh, so P.
Why P?
Because you can't have H or K next to. Oh, God damn it. Why do I keep doing this? It could be P or K. I keep thinking F is the H, and that's why I keep messing up.
No, H can't go next to F,
Right.
right? What is that? Where are we going to put H then?
H can go after the G
Okay. Yes.
for the sake of this.
Right.
And then we can put P after the H.
We have to put P after the H. Right? Because if we put
Because
P,
we can't have K next to H, right?
exactly. So P has to go here and then K has to go here.
Right.
Does that make sense for how like why that works out that way?
Yeah, it does. I keep confusing for some reason in my head the F with the H rule, thinking like it's F that can't be next to H and K, but it's H that can't be next to K and F.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why.
You want to looking at this rule, you want to just look for H and make sure
Yeah.
it's next to K and F. So
Yeah.
to make sure that H is not next to K and F, we want to put K and F together and away from H, right? So P is like our buffer here between H and K/F, right? So we
Mhm.
put those together, put P in between, and then build in the H. Does that make sense how you would try and fill that out
Mhm.
by trying to keep H away from K and F?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I messed this one up, to be honest. 'Cause I'm a little annoyed with myself. H K. Oh, I see what I did wrong here. Wrong. I'm literally writing in big and obnoxious letters the area I got wrong. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. And so do we have I should have pointed this out earlier and I like blanked. I had a really good opportunity there, but M and P are both just floaters and have no rules associated with them, right?
hmm
They always interchangeable.
Sorry, did you ask, are they always interchangeable?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
They are. So anytime you have M, you don't have to even write this out, right? If you're
Yeah.
just looking for a certain example, you can just know M and P always interchangeable, right?
Cool.
Even this first thing that we wrote and everything, they're interchangeable.
Cool.
What is the minimum possible number of people sitting between Ingrid and Manuel? Any thoughts based off of our past combinations?
How are we counting it? Because I remember it being like clockwise or counter. Are we counting it clockwise?
Great question. So they're saying clockwise, counting clockwise from Ingrid, right? So counting clockwise from Ingrid, how many people do we have from Ingrid to Manuel?
Okay, well, in this example, we have 2 people.
Right. In this first one, we have 2. So we can write down just to keep track. We can be like, okay, we have 1 with 2. What about this one here?
It could be 0.
It could be 0, right? If we put Manuel here, and then we could put like Yeah, it doesn't matter. We can just put K here and P here or something, right? That works. So this is 0, and that's the lowest number possible here, right?
Cool.
So you can pick A and move on. Just if you guys wanted to keep looking for this one, like it's 2, right? From Ingrid to Manuel, they have K and F here. That's another example of 2. This last one that we did, Ingrid to Manuel is also 2. For this one,
The answer for this one, though. This is number 21, right?
this is number 22.
Oh. I messed up.
21 was the one we just did where if M sits immediately next to O.
Oh,
And
I
then,
didn't get what the answer was. So what was the answer for that?
Carl, right? We put K right next to F.
No, like the letter number.
Oh, C.
Sorry, I just used the same diagram for both of these, and now I just threw myself off.
No worries. K has to be next to F, right? M doesn't have to be next to F because we could have written M, O, and I this way with M over here, O over here, and I over here. And then K still would have had to be over here.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
No, that was my bad too. We never actually fully finished going over that. Does that make sense for why K has to be the answer here?
Yeah, definitely. Now it does, yeah.
Okay.
And going back to 22 now.
Going back to 22, 0 is the smallest number of spots we can have, right? Between
Yeah.
F and M. If for whatever reason, we didn't have these past combinations for whatever reason, we're just trying to figure it out from scratch. It makes most sense to start out with 0, right? Try seeing if they can go next to each other. Maybe they can't, then put 1 space between them, then put 2 spaces between, like go from smallest to biggest. Because then you can feel confident that, hey, like once you hit one that works, that's your answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then 23, if Carl sits directly across from Ingrid, do we have an example where Carl sits directly across from Ingrid?
Yes.
We do. Which one? Which
The
2?
very last one we just, last one we just did.
Uh-huh. And then also this one, right? Carl sits across from
Oh,
Ingrid
yes.
if we put H over here, right? So if this is K and this is H, Carl's sitting across from Ingrid. So we can use this and both of these. So they're saying each of these people could sit next to Olivia except. So who's next to Olivia over here?
I and M or P.
Right. So I is not an answer choice, so we can cross out M and P though, right? M and P can sit next to O. Who's next to O over here?
I and H or K. Well,
Right.
you circled H though, so
Exactly. So we only have to think about this as H because for K to go here, H has to go here. So we know that H and I, again, we don't have I because I guess that would have been really easy.
yeah.
We can cross out H though, right? H can go next to O. So now that we've done that, we're stuck between F and G, right? So now we want to draw probably a quick diagram. And to make this one different from this and this, what can we do? Because we know, okay, we have F and G, right? We're trying to make K and I across from one another, right? Aren't these K and I's like right next to the F and G's?
Yeah.
I think it would make most sense then, like when you're trying to have a new diagram to cross out new answer choices, to me it makes sense.
You can't do that though because of the O and the I.
The O and the I. Oh, but if you had, for example, like K and I, can't you still put O over here?
Oh yeah, because you've got the O. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just trying to explain like why I would do this to get a different combination, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Because then you're making sure that you're like eliminating new things potentially instead of just sitting there and eliminating the same things again and again.
Totally.
So if this works out, that means that we can put O next to F, right? Let's see if this works out.
You can put
this,
H in between the I and the G.
right? Because then it's not next to K or F.
Right.
And then what happens here and here?
M and P, M and P.
Yeah, and that works, right?
Yep.
So we would be able to cross out, hey, like O can go next to F if K and I are next to one another. So the answer would be G. The reason why the answer would be G is if you put, here, wait, we can try that out really quickly. So F and G, right? If we did K and I and whatever, we can even try it flipping it. It's OI, right? Let's see why this doesn't work out. Where do you guys want to put H?
Sorry, I was just looking at what I did before incorrectly.
For this
H
one.
can go. Oh, H can't go anywhere.
Exactly. When you put O next to G, it's in between G and I. The only spaces left when K is across from I, H can't go in any of them. So that's why G can't be next to O.
Oh, I can't. I'm so mad at myself.
No, it's okay. This is a hard game, honestly, because there's so many questions. And it's not like you can use one combination to solve all of them. Like you really need a lot of different combinations.
I'm just mad at myself because I basically was consistent with the mess up that I made
Oh,
with that FHK rule.
gotcha. Yeah. But I mean, that probably means though, like if you straighten that out, you'd probably do really well at this game.
Yeah.
If K sits directly across from H, what's the minimum number of people sitting between G and K? Okay, I need to take that piece by piece because I have no idea what's going on. If K sits directly across from H. So do we have anything where K is sitting directly across from H? I think we could use this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if we're saying K is over here, let's like box it in maybe. If K is over here, then it doesn't matter. P and M can be wherever, right?
Yeah.
Let's just cross this out since this is our last question. Okay, so if this is what we're using, they're asking what's the minimum number of people sitting between G and K, counting clockwise from G to K. So counting clockwise to G to K from here, we have how many letters between G and K?
2.
2. So we can cross out 3 and 4. Since we know that 2 can work, do we want to try 1 or 0? Any thoughts? What would you guys do next?
We can try it.
But don't you have to have O and I?
You do, yeah. So
Oh,
K,
that still makes 2.
yeah, that makes 2, yeah. So wait, if K, but we already know 2, yes, we're trying to try 1 or 0. If K is sitting directly across from H, right? Can we shift these to be like this? Like, can we put K and H directly perpendicular to F and G?
No,
Why not?
because then you need the O and I.
Exactly. You don't have enough space for O and I. So we know that in terms of like F and G and K and H, like these are set, right? Like it can't be perpendicular. The relationship kind of has to be like where K and H are next to F and G, right? In some way. And O and I, because of that, can K and G be moved any closer together?
Mm. Well, oh no, it can't. Because if K and G is closer together, then H would have to be closer to F, and you can't do that.
Yes, yeah. The only other thing you could try if you wanted to, right, is putting K right next to G, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You can't do because then H is next to F, and you can't have H and F next to each other.
Yep, exactly. So we can't put them perpendicularly, and that's what would give us 1 space, right? And we can't get 0 spaces because if we moved K and H, right? I know it's hard to visualize because I'm not writing out all the letters, but if we move K and H like this, then all of a sudden H is next to F, and that doesn't work. So K and G can't have 0 spaces between them. They can't have 1 space between them, so the answer must be C, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Would you guys like me to draw out the scenarios that I'm talking about?
I'm good if anyone else needs it though.
Don't be scared to ask if you need it. I can totally draw it out. It doesn't take that long. If it would help you guys visualize. any thoughts or questions about this game in general? This was the last question on this game. No?
Hey, Surya, can we go over the first question in PT 22, game 3?
Yeah. PT 22, game 3, first question. The 6
Yeah.
paintings hanging next to one another, for sure.
Yeah. I got the rest of the questions right. It was just that first question. And like I kept looking at it last night. I was like, why is this wrong?
So this is the game about 6 paintings hanging next to one another, right? So this is like how I would draw a diagram basically for this game. Like I would just have like 6 boxes in this shape. So each of the paintings has to be an oil or a watercolor. So I would say O or W, right? Each of them. Oh, okay. Each oil, this rule I think is a little bit hard to diagram. Each oil is directly beside, above, or below another oil, right? So they're basically saying, like, if you have an oil, it either you need another oil, like in some other.
Like next to it somehow.
Exactly. Like if you have an oil, then you need this, right? I know this rule doesn't make a lot of sense, but basically, if you have an oil, you need like an oil next to it somewhere, right? The same thing is true for a watercolor. If you have a watercolor, right, the same thing is true. And then they also say each painting is a 19th or 20th century painting. And then they say each painting is directly beside, above, or below another painting painted in the same century. So that means if you have like, it's the same thing as this. If you have like a 19th century painting here, you have to have one either here or here. You can't have one in isolation by itself, basically. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the last 2 rules that they tell us is painting 2, which is this one, right? The way that they categorize them, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So painting 2 is 19th century. Okay. 19th century. Painting 3 is an oil. Okay. And then painting 5 is 20th century. So 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 20th century. Those are the rules they tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then they say if all the 19th century paintings are watercolors, that's a local rule, right? If
Mhm.
it's 19th, then it's a watercolor. If it's not a watercolor, which just means that it's
Oil.
oil, right? Then it's not 19th, which just means
Oh, it's 20th.
exactly. And I think this rule, is that what tripped you up?
Yeah, I didn't put it into like a conditional statement like that because I assumed like, well, okay, all the 19th century things are watercolor, but like, so what it like we don't know what a 20th century painting is.
Mm. No, that's fair. But it does mean that if it's oil, it can't be 19th century anymore. Right? If all the 19th century ones are watercolor, if you're looking at something that's oil, it's not 19th. And since everything is either 19th or 20th, if it's an oil painting, it has to be 20th. Right?
Hmm.
So applying what we found out here onto here, that means this one that's 19th, right? This is the original rule that was given to us. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna do this. That means this one's watercolor,
Right.
right? And then this oil here, this is 20th century.
Right.
So what does that mean? Because this is 19th and it has to be next to another 19th, this one's 20th, this has to be 19th,
Right.
right? This is the only other space because this is 20 and this is
Mhm.
20. So let's
Mhm.
just make this 19. And then if this is watercolor, fine, like this can be watercolor or this can be watercolor. But if this is 20th, doesn't this have to be 20th?
Yeah.
Because it has to be next to, above, or below another 20th.
Right.
So these are the inferences that we can make, I think, from, oh, and also this has to be oil, right?
Right.
Because this is watercolor.
Right.
And so I think these are the general inferences that we can make. And from this, painting 1 is an oil, we don't know. Painting 3 is 19th century, not true, right? Painting
Right.
4 is a watercolor, we have no idea. Painting 5 is an oil, we don't know. Painting 6 is 20th century, we do know, right? That's the correct answer. It's E.
Okay, so here's my next question. How come we don't know that painting 5 is oil if it's 20th century?
Why can't it be watercolor?
Well, it's not. And we're saying it's oil
When did we say it was oil?
because it's a 20th century.
We said if it's an oil, then it's 20th century.
Uh,
I read that as saying if it's 20th, then it's oil, right? Because then
that's
you're
not what it is.
Yeah, that's not what it's saying.
What a tricky little fucking question.
Yep.
Yeah, I got everything else right on this game except for that first one, and I kept looking at it like I don't understand, but like if E is correct, then D is totally correct. How does this not make sense? And you just breaking it out like that as a conditional statement makes so much more sense.
Yep, that I think this one was written as a conditional state. So sometimes for LR especially, it's really helpful to know when the people who wrote the test think of something as a conditional statement, because then you might want to write it out as a conditional statement, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so the more you look at stuff, the more it'll become clearer to you when they intended it to be pure formal logic versus when they didn't. I mean, I guess most things on the logic game section are pure formal logic, but that's really helpful as a distinction in the LR section, right? Like if they're talking about snakes having fur, don't try to actually reason it out in your head because that will make no sense to your brain, and it's just much better to write it out as symbols.
I'm literally writing this out because I'm not going to remember to make this a conditional statement later. And then I'll be so mad at myself again. Wow. Yeah.
Does
Okay.
anyone else have any questions on this or any other games in general?
Oh. Doozy of a game, that one.
Didn't you think it was kind of like the mapping game that we did though, or like maybe like
Yeah.
a pattern game maybe?
I found it like at first when I saw those rules and when I was reading through the rules, I was like, what the hell is this game? I was like, this is awful. And I truly thought to myself, like, I don't know how I'm going to put this game together. Like, even though we had, like, I knew I didn't have to put it together, but like, I didn't think I would be able to make the inferences from it. And like, yeah, that first question fully threw me off because I was coming down to D and E. And then I was like, I'll come back to that. And then I went through the rest of them and I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't that bad. Like that felt way easier than it needed to be. And then I did do well in it. But that first question, I couldn't figure out why I was messing that up. So yeah.
I do think most of the time that they give you pattern games or like something, like I said, something that's rare, the questions themselves aren't the worst, right? It's usually not that bad. The harder part is like writing down the rules or even thinking about the game. Like, what is this asking me to do? That's usually the harder part.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last slide that we had, I'm just going to leave this call from my phone so that it's not distracting to you guys. Okay. Let's see. I just wanted to share our contact information again. Just so you guys know, like we're still here for you even though the boot camp has ended. Like you guys can text us or email us with any general questions that you guys have. We're all individual tutors if you guys want like tutoring for anything. But even outside of tutoring, we're more than happy to help if you like send us an email, right? And you're like, I'm confused on this. We'll do our best to like help explain, or if you guys want advice on your study schedule or anything like that, we're here and available for you guys. Do you guys have any final thoughts or questions or feedback for us or anything at all?
No, I think this is really helpful.
Okay.
Like for me anyway, because like I really never did games before. So I feel like at least now I have some sort of like foundation to really like kind of grow from. So this has been great for me.
Yeah, awesome. Really glad. Any other like thoughts or questions? Okay, sounds good. You guys, like, even though this is the last class, like I said, like, please reach out if you ever have anything you want to say, or even if you want to just share your success. Like, we love to hear, like, you guys were just like, I did really well in this section and I like want to share it with someone. Like, we're happy to hear. That makes us really happy too. And that's it. You guys can like stay and hang out and chat, or you guys are welcome to leave.
Okay. Bye, Sharia. Thank you for everything.
Bye. Have a good day.